So let's spend a moment and talk about state. So this is from a recent SwiftUI stealer that would prompt the user for a password, and that password is actually stored in what's like a state property wrapper. And we can see the use of that here. And this is then passed in, the password that's inside of this state property wrapper is then passed into a password checker later on, and it checks to make sure that that password is correct. But it accesses this SwiftUI state property wrapper, which is pretty cool. We can actually see this here, a property wrapper type that can read and write a value managed by SwiftUI. We can see in the decompilation here, this is calling this wrappedValue.getter method. If we go down, we should find wrapped value. Yeah. So the underlying value referenced by the state variable. So an example of that is, just wrote this up really quickly. This is how you use this state property wrapper. I'm just setting this password to empty at this point, and I'm using it here in this secure field so that when the user inserts their password, it's stored in this state property wrapper. And then I'm printing out that password by appending the password that was input to this string. So nothing crazy. Let's look into this. I think it's pretty cool. Okay. So this is that code that I wrote for this simple app that just grabs that password and then shows it. We're going to use LLDB to access this, and we're going to debug it just to see these values and how they're passed. And what we're going to see here, just to kind of talk about it, is this SP plus 0x20, right? So that's an address on the stack, is being saved into x8. And then another address on the stack, SP, the stack pointer plus 0x8, that value is stored in x20. And then we're branching to this state.wrappedValue.getter, which is going to get that state. And from there, this variable we saw up here is then loaded into x0. X19 is loaded 64 bits from this address is loaded into x19. X19 is used later on to move that value into x1. And then x20 is given this value on the stack, and then x20 is going to serve as self in this case, and we're going to then see the .append method, which we're going to see the password that was put into this app is then appended to that self, which is x20, and then we'll later go and print it out. Okay, so let's debug that. So we are here, process launch.s. And I want to break at this address because these values will already be set, and that's where we want to be. Break this address and continue. Okay, so this is gonna bring up the app, and I'm just gonna put password in here. Make sure I spell this right. Mac malware. And this is all going to be set up. This closure is going to be run after I actually press on this button. So test password is going to be pressed. And now we're at this address that we expect it to be, thankfully, because of our breakpoint. And we're going to look at these two values in these registers to see what they have. So reg read, or x8 or x20. So these are two values or two addresses in the stack, so pointers to the stack. We can look at the contents of this. Okay, so this is another address on the stack. Not sure what this is. These look like ASCII bytes, and this is a small Swift string, right? So a struct, we can see the size of this is 10 or 0xa. So we can see what this is if we just look at it. And this is going to be that password small Swift string, which again is here. Okay, cool. So nothing at the top that we're worried about. Let's see what's inside of x20. And this value is going to most likely change after we execute this. So we see an address here, this heap address, and then we can see ASCII characters again down here, and this looks exactly the same as what we saw here. So they're pointing to similar Swift strings here. We can take a look at this. And yeah, so that password. Okay, cool. So now we're going to, again, we are at this where we're going to call this function. I'm going to branch and link to the SwiftUI.state.wrappedValue.getter method. It's going to get that state. And we're going to click next. And now x8 is not going to have that value anymore, that pointer to the stack. So let's go up and take a look at that. Okay, so now things are a little bit different. Before we had different values here. Now we have 0xa, which is a size in this case, and we have this pointer to the heap here. Not sure what this looks like yet. So let's take a look at it. Okay, another heap pointer here, a size. We have what looks like null bytes in between different characters, and we can take a look at that here. And this looks like what I input. So this object that I'm looking at is going to be this state value. Yeah, so this is going to be the password that's now at the stack address that was passed in x8, and then it's returned here. So how is it that it's then going to print this out to the console? Let's take a look at how that works. So we know that x20 in Swift is self. So this is going to be the offset on the stack for that self object that's passed into x20. So if we just click next, you can see what's here. This is the stack value. And these are, this is a string, a Swift string. So self is this password colon with a space. And now we know that we're going to execute this append method on this. But first, we're going to move the value in x19 into x1. And if we remember, we moved a value into x0 from the stack location. So let's take a look at what's in x0. So let's read x0. x0 is going to be the size of this Swift string. x19 is going to have the object, which is this that we just looked at. And if we take a look at this, oh, let's do this right. This is going to be that object for the password that was input to the app. So x19 is going to be moved into x1. And we know that Swift strings are structs that contain these two members. So we have the size and we have the actual object. So that is going to be moved into x1, and then the string.append is going to get that value and append it to the password string here. So let's take a look at that really quickly. So next, and then we're going to append that, and the append is going to then change the value that's inside of x20, since that's self. That's going to then have the entire string that we're worried about here. So regread x20 is the self object, x0 is the count, x1 is this other object. So this is going to be that password. This is going to be the size, and then this is going to be that. Oh, that's funny. It's going to be the password that was passed in. So x20 is this. So let's just take a look at that. Press next. It's going to append this here, and then it's going to be this long, right? So we appended 0x14 is going to be the size of this new string, and this should be, oh, always forget to add. All right, so now that has been appended, and then that's going to be printed out after the print function executes. All right, so basically what we were seeing here is, so x20 is equal to self, and in this case, it's equal to password and this space, so it's like this. Okay, and now state was equal to input password, which in this case was malware. And then x0 was the count, and x1 is the object. So we had x20 here. We just get this character x20 dot append x0 and x1, and then that resulted in this. At the end of it. Okay, just wanted to quickly show this. It's pretty cool. There's this project, this open SwiftUI project. So SwiftUI is not open source, but you can actually look at some of these, like this state.swift file, and take a look at how this is set up, which is pretty cool. So yeah, so that concludes the video. Just a quick look at state, how that branch works to get that value, what that looks like in memory, and then how self is used in x20, and this append method is past this password that was put in by the user. All right, cool. That's it.